Hello Reddit. For some background, I, 21-year-old female, then 20-year-old female, was kidnapped and held hostage in an RV for 3 days by a 25-year-old male back in January. I managed to escape and get away from him and was taken to the ER afterwards. During this hospital visit is when the shoot hits the fan, you could say. When I was finally able to use my phone at the hospital, I realized I missed a ton of missed calls from 2 of his baby mamas. At the time, I wasn't aware of who they were. They were random, unsaved numbers, and I've never met these women, have no idea how they got my number. These calls continued until I checked my direct message requests on Messenger and realized it was them. Weird, because I had never seen these women a day before in my life. Fast forward to when the official charges and his bail was posted, one of the baby mamas, a 21-year-old female who I'll call Melissa, started mass messaging me on all social media platforms. We had each other on Facebook Messenger, Instagram, and Snapchat. Remains that I dropped the charges and that he didn't know what he was doing at the time and is just mentally ill, and that if I were to just drop the charges, he'd be able to get checked into a local mental health facility. At first I thought about it. I openly told her at one point that I would think about it, just because of the anxiety and mental health ramifications of her harassment. Oh hell no, idiots here. That was the wrong thing to do. The John clung to that answer and told his entire family, who all know where I live, mind you, of my plans to drop charges. The harassment got even worse when I decided not to drop the charges and going ahead, pursuing full charges. She took her harassment to a new level, telling me I deserved what happened to me, that I should die for taking a good man away from his child, going as far as to threatening my safety. She told me his entire plan of winning this case by claiming I attacked him first, and he was just defending himself. She said since this was just, he said, she said, there wouldn't be enough evidence to convict, and then I should really be worried about what will happen to me. When it came down to trial, he rejected the first plea deal, and I started really getting worried about him going to trial and claiming self-defense, and it successfully swaying the jury, was really only afraid of this because somehow his family managed to convince my grandpa I deserved everything that happened to me. Well, trial never ended up happening. He took the second plea deal and ended up getting sentenced to 3 years, as they dropped all the misdemeanors against him, 5 out of 6, and only got charged with 1 felony. He was originally looking at 15 years with the severity of the charges. Even then, he only has to serve about 50% to 80% of his sentence and may be out as soon as next year. In my mind, he got off totally easy for what happened, and in my opinion, he deserved a lot more. But the harassment hasn't stopped, and I've had to leave 2 jobs due to being harassed, and it's gotten to the point his family and his baby mama has managed to convince some of the people in our community that I'm a snitch, not to be trusted, and that I was a family-breaking, home-wrecking witch. This has me thinking, maybe I shouldn't have pursued charges at all, or maybe drop them after receiving the medical attention. I'm genuinely open to being the jerk in this situation. His daughter apparently has cerebral palsy, and he's unable to pay for her insurance and child support. Should I try to make things right with Melissa for the sake of an innocent child, or should I stand my ground? Please, any advice and criticism is appreciated. I'm starting to feel incredibly guilty about this situation, as she just had a newborn and is probably overwhelmed with everything going on. Edit to add, he was only charged with 1 felony strangulation. He was also charged with 5 misdemeanors, misdemeanor attack, even though he beat me until my jaw and ribs broke, leaving me with a bad traumatic brain injury, misdemeanor unlawful imprisonment, terror threat, and malicious interference with emergency communication, which he was only found guilty of the strangulation due to his plea. His original plea deal stated he would only serve 18 months. He only received 3 years because the DA stated my impact statement and pictures swayed them. He could have received 9 years for the strangulation alone. He could have gotten 20 years easily for all of them. He's a violent repeat offender. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Holy frick no, you are not the jerk. Document everything and get a lawyer as soon as possible. They are harassing and intimidating the victim. Get a lawyer. You may even be able to sue him and the people harassing you in a civil suit. They won't stop until they are slapped down. Comment 2. Not the jerk. It sounds like from the amount of harassment that you receive, Melissa has a lot of family and friends to help her out. You might want to think about moving to another town before he gets out. Do not tell Grandpa where you go. Now, for the update. So much has happened since my last post. After the trial and the sentencing, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would start to calm down. But boy, was I wrong. The harassment from Melissa didn't stop. If anything, it escalated. She was relentless, and it seemed like she had made it her life's mission to make mine a living hell. I blocked her on all social media, but she found ways to get to me, using different accounts, contacting my friends, and even showing up at places she knew I'd be. It was like I was living in a constant state of fear, always looking over my shoulder. I tried to move on, to focus on healing and rebuilding my life, but the whispers and stares in the community made it almost impossible. I lost friends, people I thought would stand by me no matter what. They believed the lies and rumors that I was a homewrecker, that I had somehow brought this upon myself. It was isolating and devastating. My grandpa, the one person I thought would always be in my corner, had been swayed by his family's manipulations. He started to question my decisions, asking if pursuing charges was really worth all the trouble it was causing. I couldn't believe it. The one person I needed support from was doubting me. It hurt more than I can express. Work became unbearable. I had to leave 2 jobs because of the harassment. It seemed like there was no escape from the nightmare that had become my life. I was constantly anxious, always waiting for the next attack, the next confrontation. It was exhausting. But then, something unexpected happened. One day, I received a letter. It was from him, the guy who had caused all this chaos. He wrote from prison, saying he had a lot of time to think and that he was sorry. He claimed he realized the gravity of his actions and the pain he had caused me. He said he understood if I couldn't forgive him, but he needed me to know he was remorseful. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it a genuine apology or just another manipulation? I was skeptical, but part of me wanted to believe that people could change, that they could realize their mistakes and try to make amends. I decided to visit him in prison. I needed closure, to look him in the eyes and see if his remorse was real. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, walking into that visiting room, seeing him on the other side of the glass. We talked, and he seemed different, more subdued. He told me about his daughter, about how much he missed her and how he wished he could be there for her. He talked about his struggles with mental illness, how it had clouded his judgment and led him down a path of destruction. I left that visit feeling a mix of emotions. I was angry, hurt, but also, in a strange way, hopeful. Hopeful that maybe he was telling the truth, that he was taking steps to become a better person. The weeks that followed were a bit calmer. Melissa's harassment had died down, and I started to feel like I could breathe again. I even started a new job, one that I actually enjoyed, and things were looking up. But then, the twist came. I found out that Melissa was pregnant again, and the baby was his. It was a shock, to say the least. All this time, while she was harassing me, making my life miserable, she was carrying his child. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was angry, so angry that after everything, she was still tied to him, that they would always have this connection. But another part of me felt sorry for her, for the situation she was in, for the innocent child that would be born into this mess. It made me question everything. Had I made the right decisions? Should I have been more understanding, more forgiving? I was torn between standing my ground and feeling guilty for the collateral damage that seemed to keep growing. I realized that no matter what I did, there would always be consequences, always be someone who got hurt. It was a sobering thought, one that weighed heavily on me. I'm still trying to figure out where to go from here. I'm trying to hold on to the hope that things will get better, that the truth will eventually shine through. But it's hard, and some days, I'm not sure if I'm strong enough to keep fighting. But I know one thing for sure. I can't let the actions of others define me. I have to keep moving forward, keep living my life, and hope that in the end, justice and truth will prevail. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Have you considered getting a restraining order against Melissa? It's not okay for her to harass you, especially after what you've been through. Stay strong and maybe look into some support groups for survivors. You deserve peace and safety. Comment 2. I had an ex's friend try to intimidate me after a bad breakup. It's tough, but remember, you're not responsible for someone else's actions. You did what you had to do to protect yourself. Don't let anyone guilt you into thinking otherwise. Now, for the next story. I've been going out with Dave for 3 months now. We knew each other through school events as we both have kids who go to the same school and also a few mutual friends. We started dating when one day he asked me out of the blue, and after a great few first dates, we would see each other a few times every week. I have 2 sons, and of course, being a new relationship, I didn't formally introduce Dave to them, even though my oldest already knows who he is. The closest thing to that was a festival where my kids, my cousin, and I went. Dave was also there with his family, and we just waved at each other. Then, while the kids were playing a shooting game and I was just standing to the side watching, Dave popped up and we chatted for a little bit. From there, my son asked about him, and I confirmed we were dating. That was 6 weeks ago, and my son didn't seem to be bothered by it. Last Tuesday, my son outright told me he doesn't like me dating Dave and begged me to please find somebody else. I asked why and if there was a problem with Dave, and he said he just didn't like me dating him. I probed a bit further, but he wouldn't budge. He just kept saying he didn't like me dating him, and the more he repeated it, the more upset he was getting. His eyes were even getting red. So, seeing he was serious about this and this being just a casual relationship, I broke it off with Dave the next day. He obviously was disappointed and kept asking for a reason, and being a casual relationship, I figured I was entitled to keep the reason to myself. So I just told him we've been going out the last few months to test the waters, and that, through no fault of his own or mine, I wouldn't be able to commit to something serious. He asked if I was trying to patch things up with my ex. I told him it wasn't that, but he didn't seem convinced. It wasn't my job to convince him, so I left things at that. Last night, a friend asked me why I broke things off with Dave, and I told her. She snapped at me, saying I can't let my son control my dating life, and how he was eventually going to get over it. Then she went off on how Dave was in love with me, and this broke his heart, and how it's pathetic I didn't even get a concrete reason from my son. I've been divorced for over 2 years now, started dating this year, and neither of my sons have ever bluntly told me not to date a particular person. My oldest son begging me to do so for the first time is why I ended things with Dave. And I do plan on finding out what his problem with me seeing Dave was, but I'm giving him space and letting him tell me when he's ready and when he sees I'm done for good with Dave. Am I the idiot? Edit. I'm getting a ton of the same comments over my son wanting to control my entire dating life and how I broke things off with Dave. Just to reiterate, my son has been fine with me dating before and specified his issue is with Dave. And as far as Dave is concerned, I met him face to face and told him I couldn't commit to a long-term relationship. I didn't ghost him or leave him hanging. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Given how often we see posts on this app about parents who ignored how their kids feel about their new partner, and how often the kids go, "No contact, I don't think you did the wrong thing." Having said that, you do need to have a talk with him about the fact that you don't deserve to be alone forever, and you're going to start dating again at some point. You may need to get him into therapy, depending on what his reason was for wanting you to break it off with Dave. And yes, you need to know the reason. Comment 2. My oldest told me that they got really bad vibes from one of the first men I dated. They told me that if I'm happy, then that's what matters, but that they didn't want to be around him and would rather not spend much time with him. We dated for about 3 months, and I have to say, my child was right. They got a much better read on this guy than I did, for sure, and I'm glad that I ended it. Now, for the update. Thanks to everyone who read my last post. It's been a week since I broke things off with Dave, and it's been a mix of emotions. I've been trying to navigate this situation with my son, and also deal with the fallout from ending a relationship that was going pretty well until it wasn't. The first couple of days were rough. My son was quiet, and I could tell he was wrestling with something big. I didn't push him, though. I wanted him to come to me when he was ready. Dave, on the other hand, sent a couple of texts, just checking in. I could tell he was hurt, but he respected my decision and didn't push for answers. That made me feel even worse, honestly. My friends were divided. Some thought I was too quick to end things with Dave, while others supported my decision to prioritize my son's feelings. It was hard not to second-guess myself, but I stood by my choice. Then, midweek, my son finally opened up. It turns out, he overheard Dave making a joke about me to one of his friends at the festival. It wasn't anything terrible, just a little teasing about how I'm always running late. But to my son, it felt like Dave wasn't respecting me. He didn't want to tell me because he thought I'd be embarrassed or that I wouldn't believe him. It broke my heart to see him so conflicted about telling me. I reassured him that I believed him and that his feelings were valid. I explained that sometimes adults tease each other in affection, but I also understood why the comment bothered him. We had a long talk about respect, communication, and how important it is to tell each other when something's wrong. After that conversation, things at home started to feel a bit more normal. My son seemed relieved, and I felt like I understood him better. But there was still the issue of Dave. I knew I had to talk to him about what my son had told me. So I reached out and asked if we could meet up one last time. We met at a coffee shop, and it was awkward at first. I explained what my son had overheard and how it affected him. Dave was shocked. He apologized profusely, saying it was a stupid attempt at humor and that he never meant any disrespect. He genuinely seemed to regret it. We talked for a while, and it was clear that there were still feelings between us. But I also knew that my son's trust was more important. Dave understood, and we agreed to remain friendly, especially since we'd probably run into each other at school events. The rest of the week was a bit of a blur. My son seemed happier, and I felt like I'd done the right thing, even though it was hard. I missed Dave, but I also knew that my relationship with my son had to come first. As for my love life, I'm putting it on hold for now. I need to focus on my kids and make sure they're okay with any future relationships I might have. It's not going to be easy, but I'm hopeful that with time and communication, we can all move forward. It's a bittersweet resolution, but I'm learning that sometimes being a parent means making tough choices for the sake of your children. And maybe, just maybe, Dave and I can find a way to be friends, even if we can't be together. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Hey, just wondering, did you ever sit down with your son to get the full picture before breaking up with Dave? Kids can be super protective and sometimes they misinterpret things. It's great you're prioritizing your kids, but remember, you deserve happiness too. Maybe a family chat could clear the air? Comment 2. Oh boy, sounds like you're caught in a real-life telenovela. Your kiddo's got some serious detective ears, huh? But seriously, props to you for taking his feelings to heart. Just make sure you're not sacrificing your shot at love on the altar of misheard jokes. Keep that chin up, Supermom. Now, for the next story. I married my husband in 2020 after dating for 4 years. Second marriage for both of us. We're in our 50s. I have 3 grown kids that live across the country, and he has a son in college. So for Christmas 2020, everyone stayed home, which is understandable. Christmas 2021 was coming, and all my kids came home. I decided to invite everyone in the immediate family over for Christmas dinner. That includes my kids, him, his son, and his 2 single brothers, as well as his niece. I told him over a month in advance and planned the dinner. Christmas Day came, and my husband told me that he and his son were leaving to go to his brother's house for his family's Christmas dinner and would be back later. He ditched me, my kids, and my dinner. Just me and mine. It was embarrassing to say the least. I was hurt. He acted like he had no choice. Christmas 2022. I told him I was not inviting his brothers this year as I found them all very rude. My kids traveled across the country again to come home. A day before Christmas, my husband asked what time I was planning our Christmas dinner for. I told him, and he told me he wouldn't be there again because he and his son were going to his brother's. What the hell? My kids asked why he doesn't want to be around them. I don't know what to say. I've tried other family get-together events with him, his son, and all of mine, but he resists all of it. My kids can't come for Christmas this year, and my oldest and his wife have invited my husband and me to come to their house 1,000 miles away. My husband said he didn't want to be gone for his 21-year-old son. He said to me, "You just saw your kids in September. Like that is good enough for me to not see my kids for Christmas. I've bought myself tickets. I'm going to my son's home for the holidays. I haven't told my husband yet. Am I the idiot?" To give more context, he is clueless. He can be very loving. He moved into my home because I didn't want to move into his area of town. It's on the downward slide. He has worked hard at fixing up our home with hard work. We've both paid for materials before you ask, and we have separate bank accounts. I am the main breadwinner, though. My profession pays reasonably well. He works as well, but he is becoming an older man whose job skills have more and more tech involved, and he has not kept up with technology. Adding insult to injury, he is super religious and refuses to come to my gay son's wedding next year due to religious reasons. However, he is nice to him when he is visiting. We have tried discussing all these issues, but it ends in anger on both sides. We both say things we regret, but one thing he said in anger stays with me. This isn't the Brady Bunch. That hurt. Some of you may be too young to know that old TV show. I've thought of divorce multiple times, but I'm not sure. It takes a lot out of you. I do wish we had just lived together. Lol. It would have made this simpler. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Your husband doesn't like your kids, doesn't respect you, doesn't consider you his family, and doesn't care that he hurts you. Ask yourself why you stay with someone who barely tolerates you, not the idiot. Comment 2. Not the idiot. Why you put up with being excluded from his family is beyond me. The minute my kids asked why he didn't want to be around them, I would start planning my exit and divorce plan. Now, for the update. So I went ahead and bought those tickets to spend Christmas with my son and his wife. I was feeling pretty determined about it, but I hadn't told my husband yet. I was dreading the conversation, knowing it would probably lead to another argument. But I couldn't just leave without saying anything, right? The days leading up to my departure were tense. I could feel the distance between us growing, and it was like we were both tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat him down and told him about my plans. His reaction was, well, it was underwhelming. He just nodded and said, okay, if that's what you want to do. No fight, no begging me to stay, nothing. It was like he didn't even care that I was going to be away for Christmas. I left feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The trip itself was bittersweet. My son and his wife were amazing hosts, and it felt so good to be with them. We laughed, we cooked, we shared stories. But there was this nagging feeling in the back of my mind about what was happening back home. I called my husband on Christmas Day, and he said everything was fine, that he and his son had a quiet dinner at home. It was a short conversation, and we both avoided any deeper topics. When I got back, things between us were different. We were polite to each other, but the warmth was gone. I tried to talk to him about how we could work on our relationship, but he just shrugged and said we'd figure it out. It was like he had given up, or maybe he just didn't see the point in trying anymore. A few days later, I found out from his niece that he actually did go to his brother's house for Christmas dinner after all. He lied to me. When I confronted him about it, he said he didn't want to upset me while I was with my son. That just made me even more upset. It felt like he was choosing his family over me and mine, again. We had a big fight after that. I told him how isolated and unimportant I felt, and he accused me of always wanting things my way. It was the same old argument, but this time it felt like we were both just going through the motions. Neither of us had the energy to really fight for our marriage. In the midst of all this, my gay son called to talk about his wedding plans. I was so excited for him, but when I mentioned it to my husband, he just gave me a disapproving look and changed the subject. It was clear that he still wasn't willing to support my son, and that hurt more than anything. As for the Brady Bunch comment, it kept replaying in my head. I realized that maybe he was right. We weren't some perfect blended family from a TV show. We were real people with real problems, and maybe we were just too different to make it work. Now, I'm sitting here, feeling stuck. I don't know if I have the energy to go through a divorce, but I also don't know if I can stay in a marriage where I feel so alone. It's like we're just coexisting in the same space, not really connecting as a couple should. So here I am, no closer to a resolution than I was before. I wish I could tell you that we had some big breakthrough, or that we decided to go our separate ways, but the truth is, we're just in limbo. And that's possibly the most unsatisfying resolution of all. Now, for the comments. Comment 1. Oh honey, your husband's got the holiday spirit of a Grinch with a side of Scrooge. If he's bailing faster than a kid spotting broccoli, it's time to deck the halls with some boundaries. You're not a backup plan, you're the headliner. Maybe next year, send him a cardboard cutout of himself as his +1. Comment 2. I get it, you're in a tough spot feeling like the solo act in a duo. It's rough when the fam feels divided, especially on days meant for togetherness. You're brave for choosing joy with your son over conflict at home. Remember, you deserve a partner who's present, not just a present partner. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.